Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach and we're going to tackle more rocks bugs. Going to be looking at a couple of bugs that have to deal with attributes. So I'm hoping this won't take long, but you never know. So I have been trying to find a time for my son to retake his test. He unfortunately failed the first time, but that happens. You know, the statistics said that 1 in 4 fail the first time. The really frustrating thing has been trying to find anywhere within Minnesota, even with like an hour and a half drive, of him being able to retake his test. It is mind-boggling how hard it is to find a place for him to take his test. It was hard enough to find a place to have him take it the first time. So he's going away at camp as a volunteer for a week. So that's good. And hopefully while he's gone, I'll keep looking every day and seeing if anything shows up. But it's the same problem, just trying to find our younger son a place to go take his temp test, which he failed the first time. But we need him to get on that path, and there's really nowhere for him to do it. I'm just kind of stunned as to the fact that there's hardly any availability. So a little frustrating, but we'll figure it out. Another thing we're going to figure out is how to emit attributes correctly in rocks. So this one is all about putting the not null if null as a return here. And then it's showing up. I already have a branch and a test in place. It's showing up down here, but without the return on it. If it had return on it, it would be just fine. One thing that the error message says, and this is something I'm also going to want to check, is to say, well, yes, it's valid on a property, indexer, parameter, or return. So one thing I want to try is to make sure that I actually have in this test, is examples for really all 4 of them. So what happens when you have it here and then put it on a parameter, an indexer, and a property, and make sure all 4 are handled correctly. But let's just do this one first. So somewhere in our code, we do things with attribute description, right? Yes. So attribute description is we get the attributes, and that's something on a symbol, and then we say get description. And we do all sorts of fun things in here, which is we make sure that we don't emit some of these. And with the next one we do with conditional attributes, we may have to include this as well. But we also, I think, don't we have a attribute targets, get target? Yes. So here is where it's interesting, because we apparently don't get the right target here. I think it's probably saying, oh, it's on a, where would this be? Well, there's no thing for method, yeah, here. And you'd think it would do this. So let's just, do we have this in the debugger mode? Yes, we do. So let's come back over here. No, yes. And let's see what this, it's going to do it for a couple, for member identifier, I think. No, I think it should only do it for 1, because member identifier is emitted directly as just text. We don't go, because we're adding that attribute. So let's run this under the debugger and see what happens. Okay, we do get here, which makes sense. So what's our target here? Return value. Okay, that's a little surprising. Where are we getting target from? That's coming up from here. So it should say return on it, right? Because that's what we're getting here is the return value. So, and then we have attributes, we have 1, and that is, oh, that's default member attribute. Okay, we don't care about that one. And then we have attributes here. That is the not null if null. And in this case, We don't have a target. Okay, so how do we have get return type attributes. So yes, this is actually coming from return type attributes. So and this is from that. So then we call get description, and get description does this, which we default to being null. Okay, so I'm kind of wondering why do we do that? Because where are we calling this from? All the places that we're calling it. What I really want to get at is the code. Here, the type reference model, we're saying, well, this case is the return value. So when we do a type reference, we're actually passing it in explicitly. But in all other cases, we don't. And we don't care. We know, which kind of makes sense because in most of the cases, we're putting the attribute on the thing that we're trying to find. So I would guess the reason in this case, what we would want to do is anywhere we call return type attributes, which are two places. That's here and then here, but we don't actually care about the description of them. This is the only place. So let me try this. If I say attribute targets, and let's say return value, okay? And then let's come over here and let's assume that that's going to do the right thing. So that's going to do return and then that. Let's see what happens. Okay, that passes, but we're going to have to run everything because I'm not entirely sure this is going to not break something later on. So first things first, let's go back to the error. We have property index parameter and return. So what we're going to do is say not null if not null cases, okay? And then we're going to put that here. And then we're also going to come down here and say it's that. And then we're going to come back here and squash this and get it back to being a string empty because we're going to be doing a lot more code generation. Okay. So in this case, we're going to say visit method. I like that because I have nothing else better to come up with. And now we're going to have a public virtual string visit property. We say get and set. And in this case, we're going to put not null if name of, I have no idea. The name of the property itself, value, because value is what's actually passed in. So I'm not entirely sure what you would do in this case. Let's come up here. And yes, we would take that off. Okay, so yeah, you threw that up there, but there's no name of value. And here it's saying, fine, we'll just make it string. We don't care. Name of visit property. And what happens when we say public class X, not null, even null cases. And then we say here, nope. Generate overrides. So we would have visit property, and visit property doesn't have it, which is interesting. So how does this work with a property? Initializes the attribute associated parameter name. So what happens if I just literally say value here? And now I take these off and I do this. Still doesn't care. What about indexer? So let's say this object, we're going to say node again. Now we're going to say name of node. And what are you barking at? Oh, yeah, because you need a body. Return default, and then set would just be, sorry, I'm not thinking straight. So now in this case, what happens? Still, the only place we care about it is on the method. We don't even care if it shows up, apparently, with an indexer. So this is starting to make me think that didn't really care about where you put this. Let's do one more. And let's actually take this off here. And let's say visit parameter. And we don't do that, but we do that. Because it says it can be put on a parameter. Nope, that's too much. We want to take that off and do this. This is just a discovery. It's like, okay, I think I solved it for the one case. Well, what about all the others? And again, it did show up in parameter, but here's the thing. It would probably show up correctly because it is a parameter attribute. The only problem with this one is that it's the return value. So we don't care about the fact of it being anywhere else other than the return. And in fact, I think this potentially will fix or break other things where we did have return things and we weren't saying return. We shall see. But yeah, we're putting it on a parameter and an indexer and a property and a return value. And those are the only that are actually valid. If I come here and I look at parameter, property, return value. Oh, it doesn't even say indexer. And there is no partial definition of it. So that's literally the only places it can go. So it's interesting where it thinks on the indexer. So that's kind of funny because the error says it is only valid on property, indexer, parameter, return. So I don't know why it's saying this is not valid. In any event, let's just grab all this. And we're going to put that in here and make that all of the cases. Okay. And we really should only see it on two, the parameter and the return, and that should be fine. So I'm going to run this. It's going to fail because I got to get the generated code and then I'll see if it passes. Okay, so it did pass and it's putting the attributes in and we are getting the return. It is showing up in the other places. So like with the indexer, it does show up. There's a property, it does show up. But as you saw when you generated the overrides, it wasn't requiring them to be there. So that's always been a little bit of a issue in terms of when do I actually put in a attribute and when do I not. I don't know if there's any hard and fast rule to say you do this one or you don't do this one. I've just been kind of putting it in if it shows up, and only if it's a problem do I try to exclude it. So okay, so this works, but now I'm going to run all the tests, restart, run everything, and if I ever get to a point where I went, oh crap, this screwed something up, I will come back. Or I will come back and everything worked. Okay, real quick break. This is the one test, and the test projects have failed is because this is marked as return, and we didn't put return on it, so now we are. So now that works. All the rest of the tests succeeded. So integration tests, code generation tests next. Okay, I'm actually a little confused. So I just ran everything and everything passes. And then I said, I was curious because I think this bug that I've fixed was in part in some of these things with this or this. And so I said, okay, well, let's just turn off the succeeding ones and put on the failing ones and see, do they work? Or how much of the errors have gone away? And it's telling me now they all work. And so I'm sitting here going, no, they can't, because there is a bug here that I found in runtime entity type. And I have not done any updating with NuGet packages, so this would still be the same. where there's an issue where it has a method that has a ton of parameters on it. And we can't use a func in that case. So there's a general problem here that we have to look at when we're creating the handlers, that we may have to emit custom delegates to do that. But it's saying it succeeded. So something's going on here. I mean, it does have warnings and error diagnostics, was emit successful true, and it says you're good. Something does not seem right here. I'm actually now not entirely convinced that this is giving me the right answer. So hold on. The problem is that this takes a long time to run. So I'm sitting here going, you can't have passed. Thou shalt not pass. You can't. Because it just literally doesn't work with at least that one. So, I mean, you could say, oh, that's great, but no, something's amiss here. Something is not correct. So I'm going to grab this. I'm just going to grab Entity Framework. Let's come up here, turn off both of them, and then we're going to come down here, and now everything's going to fail. But we're just going to stick that one in here, okay? Now, it's saying 865. So 867.50, it's, yeah, 867.50. What was the count of that one? 100, 867. I mean, I think it's roughly this 118. So at least it found all the types. But it is saying that it did find warnings or error diagnostics. So, like, why is that not then going through and showing them if there is an error? You know, that just doesn't make any sense. I'm like, did I accidentally comment something out or something? You know, if it says the emit is successful and the result comes from here to say all the diagnostics and if there are errors, and then we also look to say if there are warnings, and if it's not one that we ignore, which, where does that come from? Yeah, we just make that array empty. We can put ones in there in certain cases. I'm quite confused. So let me run this again and just see what happens. Okay, now we're actually getting errors and things like that. And it's saying, well, it was false, but emit successful was false. So that even is almost worse because I'm like, how did that think that running all of them was good? Like, how did that even work? I mean, I know I turned off include failing, and that should have included that. So we are, though, getting it a little smaller. So the size of the number of errors for Entity Framework did go down. So, you know, and the number of types found and all this is kind of only for when I'm trying to figure out when something is actually failing. When it's successful, I don't want, you know, I'm actually thinking of taking off all of those values because it doesn't mean anything at that point. We've already said, yes, it's good. So let me see what happens when I run AutoMapper. Well, this seems like more success. And in fact, now we can include AutoMapper because all the things come back. And I knew that this not null thing was a problem with a couple of assemblies, not just the one in Entity Framework. So this definitely also fixes things. That's good. I'm going to do the conditional one in the next episode. And we'll also then look at the one with the emitting of the delegate, because that's obviously still a problem. So there's still work left to be done, but I'm going to consider this one closed, so I will close it out once I'm done with this video. So thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.